The Fancounters Celebrity Podcast, number 162. Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast.
You were like the carrot top of interviewers.
Wow, how disappointing was that question?
You did not just ask me that.
Well, that's a big question.
Never mind, I'm done. I'm not doing the show.
Wow, I can't believe it.
I'm telling you, I'm hooked.
Nick.
Yeah, he's so awesome. He's so a good friend of mine.
Welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. My name's Nick.
And I'm Tracy.
And we are here again for another celebrity interview on your Friday to kick off your weekend. You can follow us on social media. Go to Facebook, search Fancounters. We are there. The big thing we want to talk about is our YouTube page. Now, we put all of our shows on YouTube, and we are starting to think about maybe doing some of these a little bit more live.
That would be cool.
For YouTube. But you know what? I'm not going to do it if we don't have the subscribers. And right now we only have like 100 and something. But if we can start to monetize this podcast and figure out a way to maybe get our guest hosts some gas money, that would be super awesome.
Although they would see our faces then. Would that be a problem?
It would be for them, not so much for us. They would have to endure that. So go to our YouTube channel. It's Fancounters Podcast. And I have linked to it several times in our Facebook group. And if you could subscribe to our YouTube channel and tell your friends to do the same, call up your mom, your dad, your aunt, your uncle, everybody who listens to the show, right? Because everyone in your circle, call them, tell them to subscribe to YouTube, and that'll greatly help us out. And we'll bring you some better content.
Absolutely.
Some visual content. In fact, Tracy was showing me today that apparently in a couple months, there's going to be a festival down in Louisiana. And I said, this show should travel for it.
I know, that'd be cool.
What is it?
Bo's Extravaganza.
Which is?
Remember Dukes of Hazzard?
Of course I know Dukes of Hazzard.
Bo Duke, John Schneider.
Yep.
He has this big extravaganza that like celebrates the Dukes of Hazzard and
Will
stuff.
Tom Wopat and Catherine Bach be there?
I don't know.
See, if they're there, we should go down and do a show from there.
What about Cooter?
Is he still alive?
Absolutely.
Okay. So that's some of the stuff we could bring you. We could do live shows from Bo Fest.
That'd be cool.
That would be great. So anyway, subscribe to our YouTube channel. And Tracy, on the show this week, we've got a very special guest. I have been working on this guest for months, literally. He's a very hard guy to track down. And then when I did track him down, it was hard to like nail down a date for an interview. He doesn't do a lot of interviews anymore.
But maybe he's very busy too.
Oh, I'm sure he is. He's a very in-demand guy. In fact, he was nursing his wife back to health. He was calling himself Nurse Gary in our email conversations, which I thought was kind of funny.
That's pretty cool, though.
It is.
That's true love, you know.
So hopefully she's doing well now that he has time to do this. So we're talking about Gary Sherman. Gary Sherman is a film director and film writer. He is most known in my world for directing and writing Poltergeist 3. A lot of people don't know this, but he was approached to do Poltergeist 2 and didn't end up taking that job. And then when he was given the chance to resurrect the film and create its final installment, he was on it, and I can't wait to hear about that today. And I know he's done a lot of interviews about Poltergeist in the past. He's probably tired of talking about it, but I've been waiting 32 years to talk to this guy, and I'm hoping Gary is accommodating to all of my Poltergeist questions.
Well, and I hopefully get to ask him a question about a movie that I like that he directed too.
What was that?
Wanted Dead or Alive.
Oh, all right. Don't forget this time. You've been known to mention things in the opening and then not do them.
I have a good memory. It's just very short.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Gary Sherman was featured in our episode honoring the late Heather O'Rourke, which came out on Christmas Day. You might want to check that out from last month. He gave some memories of Heather, and I will replay those memories as part of the show today. So, without further ado, let's hear all about Poltergeist 3, which, by the way, Tracy, you were here at my house last night.
Yes, we were.
We watched Poltergeist 3 together.
Yeah, we did. Even had popcorn.
We did have popcorn. Just to make sure we didn't miss any key moments, and I came up with some questions I think have never been asked before. So hopefully we'll be able to get some answers on some of the stunts and special effects that Gary created for the movie Poltergeist 3. Ready?
Sounds good to me. I'm ready, man.
Here we go. Here's Gary Sherman. Gary Sherman, welcome to the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
You bet.
It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Now, you saw your first horror movie when you were around 5 or 6 years old, and it was The House of Wax in 3D. And I read in an interview that you said it scared you, but now you've made a career out of making other people scared. So I kind of find that funny.
True. Yeah, well, it did scare me, and I mean, I was way too young to see House of Wax when I saw it. My older brother took me; he thought it'd be funny
to see you squirm,
and it really basically hooked me on horror films. I grew up watching horror films, but what I think influenced me more in my pursuit of horror was the horror that was happening in reality in Chicago, where I was growing up. There was suddenly a whole spate of serial killings in Chicago when I was around 10 or 11 years old. And one of them involved 3 boys about my age.
Wow.
Who disappeared, and their bodies were found in a forest preserve at the edge of the city, naked and mutilated.
Oh my God!
And the Chicago Sun-Times actually published a picture, although they blurred it and everything, of the 3 naked bodies draped in a ravine in the forest preserve. And I got to tell you, that just branded me, as it did lots of people. And there was a whole thing about about them publishing those pictures and everything. And it just, I had nightmares for years, and I'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night. And my brother teased me, and then I was a very precocious kid, and somebody said to me, learn about your fears, and you won't be afraid of them anymore.
Yeah.
And I started reading from the time I was like 12 years old, reading texts about serial killers. And I mean, high level medical books and college level literature. And I just really got in touch with my fears about it. It didn't make me less afraid.
Right.
It just put me in touch with my fears. And when I started writing, I realized I was so in touch with my fears. If I could write something that scared me, I knew it would scare other people.
Gary, I can relate to something that you had. You said that you saw your first horror movie when you're 5 or 6, and it scared you. I actually saw a horror movie when I was a little bit older than that, my first one, and it was The Blob, and it scared me to death.
Steve McQueen.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The Blob, I was a little older already when I saw The Blob, but I found The Blob really frightening too. And there was a whole spate of films at that point which were in that kind of genre, like The Blob and The Tingler. Remember The Tingler?
Oh my gosh, yeah. You're bringing back memories now.
Yeah, The Tingler, they actually put vibrators on some of the seats in the different theaters. And at a certain point, they would set the vibrators going and people would jump.
I would go to a movie like that. Well, Gary, you didn't start in films. You actually started with music. You were doing some music sessions with some very famous people like Bo Diddley when you decided to pick up a camera and just play around and shoot some footage. But that ended up being one of your first films, The Legend of Bo Diddley, which was a short film. And then after that, from what I read, you really wanted to make films. So someone says you have to have something to write about first. And so you used your horror kind of thinking to create Deathline, which was inspired by your time living in London, right?
Right. I was living in London, when I wrote Deathline. And there was a lot of years in between there. I mean, I was working my way through college as a session musician, and I was studying photography in college. I had no intention of going into film, but photography. I was an artist in search of a medium, and I discovered photography.
Mm-hmm.
I had gone through I've been drawing and painting and sculpting and doing all kinds of different areas of art. And then I discovered photography, or basically photography discovered me, but it's a long story. We had a very famous photographer who came to the school to do a critique, and he saw my work, and he just said, you should be a photographer. I take on 3 students a year. Would you like to be one of them?
Wow.
And that's what I did. So that got me into photography. Then one day I discovered an old Aeroflex in a closet at school, and I asked one of my professors if I could shoot an assignment that was given on the 16 millimeter Aeroflex instead of still. And he said, yeah, as long as, I'm going to judge it on the photography. And the assignment was shoot somebody working. And I was doing a session with Bo because I was working my way through school as a session musician.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to Bo, hey, can I shoot some footage of you? And he said, yeah, sure. Just ask Ron, Ron Malo, the head engineer. He said, if it's okay with him, it's okay with me. So Ron said, yeah, just stay out of the vocal booth and shoot. He said, they make so much noise in that studio, I'll never hear you or your camera. Somebody Marshall Chess walked in. It was one of the owners of the company. He said, what are you doing? Boom, boom. Long story short, they ended up hiring me to make a movie about Bo Diddley.
That's cool.
And that led me to commercials, and commercials led me to London. And I was in London shooting commercials, and everybody kept saying to me, you should make a movie, you should make a movie. I said, how do you make a movie? They said, write something. And Jonathan Demme, who was my partner in our commercial company in London, and John at that time was producing and had no want or desire to direct. John kept pushing me and say, write something. So he and I wrote a whole bunch of scripts together, and I wrote some with other people, and they're all very student-like and political, and and nothing anybody was going to make. And then John Daly at Hemdale, who really liked one of the scripts I wrote, he said, you're a really good writer. He said, why don't you write something we can make? And I said, what would that be? And he said, a horror movie.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, what a deal. I can hide a political polemic inside a horror movie, and nobody will even know. And so then I wrote, I had this idea, and I wrote Deathline, which is, like a completely anti-establishment movie, but it's all hidden as a horror film. And the next thing, Jonathan then read the script, and he thought it was great. And so he gave it to Paul Maslansky, who happened to be in town, who was a friend of his. And Paul gave it to Jay Cantor, now Lad Jr. And the next thing I knew, I was making a movie.
Wow. Yeah, that was my question, which you just answered, is how did you get somebody to take a chance on it? But you had networked your whole time there, and it was the right people, the right time.
I had a very successful career as a commercials director, and it was actually Jonathan. May he rest in peace. It was Jonathan who went to Jay Cantor and Alan Ladd Jr. and said, Gary should direct this movie. You shouldn't just buy the script. And he, Jonathan's job was selling me as a commercials director. So Jonathan went in and sold me as a feature director to Alan Ladd and Jay Cantor.
That's pretty cool.
So that's how it all happened. Thank you, Jonathan.
So I want to ask you something. You directed a movie called Wanted Dead or Alive. It's one that I really like a lot. Rutger Hauer, Robert Guillaume in it, and Gene Simmons from Kiss. So my question is, what was it like working with Gene Simmons?
Gene is amazing. He's a pain in the ass to a great extent. He only cares about one thing, and that's money, and whatever it whatever he has to do. He wants to be a successful actor because he wants to make a lot of money acting. He wanted to be a successful musician because he wanted to make a lot of money as a musician. And, Gene is who Gene is. I mean, he just is, he has a mind that thinks in dollar signs. He also historically thought had a little sexual problem.
Yeah, I've heard of that.
He just felt if he didn't get it wet twice a day, it would fall off or something. I think. Anyhow, Gene and I got on like crazy. I mean, how I met him, I didn't know. I mean, I knew of Gene. I was never really a big Kiss fan. My musical tastes run a little bit more sophisticated than that. But anyways, I'm in my office. We got our schedule pushed up on us and Wanted Dead or Alive. Long story, but our pre-production. We wrote. Brian and I wrote that script in 2 weeks. That's all we had to. That's all the time that the studio gave us. They called us in. They had a script written. The script was awful. I mean, it was unreadable. It was unshootable. And they had already sold the picture based on the title. So it already had a release date.
Okay.
Wow.
And just based on the title, Wanted Dead or Alive. And so they needed a movie to go along with the title. And Bob Ramey called me in and said, "You got to do this for me." And Bob Ramey, I had done Dead and Buried with Bob, and I had done Vice Squad with Bob, and we had a great relationship. So now he's president of another studio, and they've got this film that they've got to get done. And so, anyways, I brought in Brian Taggart. Actually, Denise Denovi was working for Bob Ramey at the time, and Denise recommended that I meet Brian. I had dinner with Brian that night, and we started working before morning.
Wow.
And we had 2 weeks to get out a first draft, and then we figured we'd do a second draft and polishes during pre-production. So it was all very rushed, and it was all a lot of pressure. So I'm in my office, and we're in the middle of casting, and da-da-da, but my assistant comes in, Judy, and she says, "Gene Simmons is on the phone for you." I said, "What?" She said, "Gene Simmons." I said, "From Kiss?" She said, "Yeah." And I said, "What does he want?"
Right.
And she said, he wants to talk to you about being in the movie. And I said, "Oh, that's all I need is a drugged out rock and roller in this movie with all the other time pressure problems and stuff I have." I said, anyway, I'll call him back, which I didn't. And about 2 hours later, I'm sitting in the office with Arthur Sarkisian, my producer, and Judy comes walking back in and says, "Gary, Gene Simmons is on the phone again." And Arthur says, "What does he want?" I said, "He wants to be in the movie." I said, "I don't want him in the movie." And he said, "You know what? Talk to him anyways. Don't give him a part, but let's see if we can get him to write some music for the movie or something." I said, "Okay, Arthur." So I pick up the phone, and there's this voice that I did not expect to hear on the other end of the line. And the guy says, "Mr. Sherman, this is Mr. Gene Simmons." And I'm going, "What?"
Not the rock and roller you expected.
No. And he says, "I've read the script. My agent had a copy of the script and sent it to me." And he says, "I speak fluent Hebrew and I speak several dialects of Arabic fluently, and I could be of a lot of help to you on this film."
Wow.
And I said, "Wow, you're kidding." And he said, "No." I said, "You know what? Okay, we'll meet." So he says, "Well, I'm in Detroit. I've got a concert tonight and I got a concert tomorrow night, but I have my own plane, so I could fly in and meet you for lunch tomorrow if you'd like." And I said, "It's on you. I'm not promising anything." He says, "No problem." anyways, we met for lunch. He blew me away. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met.
He's an intelligent businessman.
Oh yeah, I mean, he is just as sharp as he could possibly be. And I read him. I said, I want to read you. And I read him, and he did really well in the reading. And I said, okay, you got the part.
That's cool.
And what I found out, which I didn't know, and I guess a lot of people know this, but I mean, Gene's never had a drink of alcohol in his life, much more a drug. He doesn't take aspirin.
Right.
Wow. He is as clean as the driven snow. He was amazing. And he was there. He was doing translations for people of the dialogue. And he was just extremely helpful. He was in awe. Actually, I think he was a little intimidated working opposite Rutger Hauer. Wow. In all his other scenes, it was much easier to work with. When it came to him doing scenes directly with Rutger, he was a little intimidated.
Interesting.
Because, I mean, Rutger Hauer was one of the world's great actors.
Right. So I have a question for you as far as directing in that movie. Your very last scene of the movie when Gene Simmons has the grenade in his mouth and Rutger Hauer pulls the pin and everybody runs away and goes grenade. How do you film somebody blowing up like that?
Well, as you probably know, and we'll get around to later in this conversation, practical effects are my baby. I love doing practical effects. We actually built a fully reticulated dummy.
Wow.
Of Gene. And did a casting of his head, and it had a perfect head, and it was a completely mechanical body that shook and moved and doo-doo. So, wow. And we actually had explosives in the head, and when everybody runs away, we went click and blew his head off. You actually see the head blowing apart. We had stuff in there and everything to really make it very real.
That was very cool.
And then and we knew that the body, once the head was blown off, the concussion would cause the body to fall to the ground.
Right.
So it was all rigged up. One take.
Wow. Otherwise you'd have to build a new Gene.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we had it. Well, we knew the body would survive because there was metal plate below at the shoulder line to protect the body from being damaged. And we did have an extra head to put on there if we needed it. I actually kept it, but the latex just disintegrated after a while. I had it in a storage room instead of having it protected, and so it went bye-bye, which I'm sorry. I loved having that head with the hand grenade in its mouth.
Wow. Well, I want to talk a little bit about Poltergeist 3. It's definitely it's my favorite horror trilogy of all time. 3, I think, out of the 3 movies, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the phone with you right now, I think it was the best because I think technically it was very challenging to film with so many mirrors, which I want to talk about in a little bit. But first, you did not use Craig T. Nelson or Jo Beth Williams. I talked to Oliver Robbins in an interview earlier this year, and he said he was never even contacted for the film. Was it always your intention to not use the original family, or were there too many scheduling problems for that to happen?
When MGM asked me to do the picture, they had already decided before I got involved that they were not going to I had to do the script. They wanted me to write the script and produce and direct the movie. And they told me I had to come up with a way to not reuse Craig T. Nelson.
Right.
And Jo Beth Williams because they wanted too much money.
Okay.
And the studio said, we'd rather put the money on the screen because they're not going to sell tickets. And, we'd rather they felt that who sold tickets to that movie was Heather and Zelda.
Yeah. Yep.
And also it would have been, Mr. Beck. Unfortunately, he passed away before we made the movie, and we had to replace him. But the Reverend Kane. And so, and they said, let's put the money on the screen. So when they first came to me to do the movie, I mean, even before I knew any of these details, Jay Cantor calls me and says, I want you to do Poltergeist 3. And I said, thank you very much, but no thank you. He said, you serious? I said, no, I don't want to do Poltergeist 3. I said, all of my films, if you look at any of my films are all very political. And I hide political messages within them or sociologically important messages, if not political. And they're all character driven. I have never everything from Dead and Buried, Deathline, Vice Squad, Lisa, and any of Wanted. They're all very character driven. They're not story driven.
Right.
And Poltergeist is definitely a story driven kind of thing. And I didn't want to do it, and I didn't want to do a sequel. And anyway, Jay and Laddie, were running MGM at the time, and they had given me Deathline, and Jay had been my mentor through my whole career, and basically they just put it to me, please come on and do it. I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'll give you a list of my demands. A, I want to shoot it in Chicago. B, I want to shoot it at the John Hancock building in Chicago, because if I'm going to make a haunted house, I'm going to make the biggest haunted house that ever existed.
Yep.
And 3, there were more, but 3, I want to do all the effects practical. And they looked at me and said, are you crazy? I said, well, that you already know. To their question. But no, I said, I love computers. And I have been a computer geek since my Model 50, IBM, which was one of the first, home computers that came out. It was 50 megabytes of storage. I mean, It was huge. It had 512K of RAM.
With the 5 1/4 inch floppy drive, right?
Yeah. And a monitor that was the size of a house.
Yep.
That was only green and yellow. I mean, or green and, it was just this green screen that letters popped up on. Anyhow, you didn't even get pictures on it much. I mean,
right.
But anyhow, and I cut one of the first movies for television. I did a television film that we used the CMX 2000 to cut. It was one of the first films that was cut for television that was all done electronically. I mean, I'm really into innovation. And I had also, in a film that I did called The Mysterious 2, which was a big event I did for NBC, that film, if researched, possibly was the first film ever that used CGI. Because CGI didn't even exist as a term. I had an idea for an image that I wanted to put in one scene, and there was no way to create that image except three-dimensionally on a computer. And at that time, computer graphics were in their infancy. This was 1978 or 79. And I heard about a guy in Boulder, Colorado, who was doing medical imaging and digitizing images. And I called him and told him what I wanted to do. And he said, come to Boulder, let's talk about it. And I did, and we created this image. which had to be transferred to microfilm, and from microfilm to 35 millimeter high contrast film, and then all embedded together on a big Oxbury multi-head projector optical camera. So it was very analog in putting it together, but we created the image digitally. So anyways, getting back to Poltergeist, why I wanted to do all the effects practical is I wanted to do the last, it was an ego thing. I wanted to do the last major film that had no CGI or opticals in it at all. And that's why I wanted to do that. Now we get to the Hancock building. The kitchen that we shot in was actually the kitchen of the restaurant that's at the top of the Hancock building. The pool was the actual pool that's in the Hancock building. It's actually the highest indoor pool in the world.
Wow.
And we had taken over the pool, the health club, and we shot on the roof of the Hancock building. We shot in the machine room at the top of the building. The window washing rig is the actual window washing rig on the Hancock building, which I can't count the number of times I rode that up and down the side of the building. Tom scared when I told the crew, the cast, the crew we talked to, we said, nobody's going to be forced to go on the window washing rig. You have a choice. You can go on it, or you can't. If you have a fear of heights and you don't want to go on it, you don't have to. And so some of the crew got changed out to go on the window washing rig. I had no fear of heights whatsoever. I had a blast riding up and down the side of the building. But Tom Skerritt said to me, he said, if I have to get on that thing, Gary, where are you going to be? I said, where do you want me? He said, within arm's reach. He said, I'm not getting on that thing unless I can grab onto you. And I said, okay, I'll be there. And I was like 2 inches off camera. And every shot we did on that window washing rig. We shot the lobby of the Hancock building. We actually shot in the Chicago Water Tower building because it was a more elaborate lobby than the Hancock building. And the garage was partially built and partially shot in a garage of a building that was under construction.
Okay.
So, but we did shoot in the Hancock building quite a bit. We shot on the roof of the Hancock building a lot. I mean, all that stuff on the outside of the building was actually shot on the outside of the building, except when you actually get down to the apartment level. We built 3 stories of the Hancock building, exterior and interior, on the soundstage. The apartment was completely built on the stage. The hallways, the stairways. So I guess the security room was the real security room in the building.
Okay.
And as was the pool. And we shot a lot in the building, but the building was finished already. I mean, the building actually was like 15 years old already when we shot, but we wanted to make it look like the building was under construction. So we built all the sets, all the hallways and the stairways and all of that. It would have been really inconvenient that, people in their multi-million-dollar condominiums did not want a film crew inside the building all the time.
No.
So we built a lot of sets. I think we built something like 200,000 square feet of sets.
Oh my
from
gosh.
beginning to end on that film.
I don't know if it's your style or if you want to call it style or whatever, but when Tracy and I actually just rewatched the film together last night in preparation for this interview, and you use a lot of tight shots. And Tracy remembers from Wanted, Dead or Alive that you use a lot of tight close-ups as well. Is that kind of just something you like to do? Is that your style?
Yeah, I don't shoot masters ever. I will actually, when I shoot a scene, I will start with the close-ups and work my way back because I want to get as intimate with the actors while they're still fresh as I can, which is a character thing for me. And I do not use zoom lenses at all. I use prime lenses. And I basically carry a very small array of lenses. A 50 millimeter lens or a 35 millimeter lens, anywhere from a 35 to a 50, on a 35 millimeter camera, you call normal. And the reason you call that normal is because it looks exactly like what you see with your eye. Mm. If you put a 35 to 50 millimeter lens on a movie camera and you put your eye in the eyepiece and keep your other eye open, you're seeing the same thing through both eyes. Okay, there's no difference. The depth of field's the same. The angle of acceptance is the same. And to me, I think when you make a film, there's a point of view. And I want the point of view to be human. And as soon as you go to longer lenses or wider lenses, there's an abstraction that's happening. It's changing the world. It's changing how you see. And if you want to do that and you want to make a statement doing that, do that. But for the most part, most of my films are shot either on a 35, a 50. Sometimes I go to an 85.
Okay. Sometimes
I will go to a 25 when I was shooting, like Panavision and using Zeiss lenses, the 25 is no distortion. And the 25 doesn't feel a lot different than a 35 or a 50. But that's the way I shoot. I look at things through my eyes, and I want the audience to look through my eyes. And as soon as I go to other lenses, it's not my eye anymore. So what I shoot a lot is close and wide, because that's the way we go through our life.
Yeah.
We stand close to somebody looking at them, but you see everything around them. It's out of focus, and then you have to almost pull focus with your eye to get there. And that's the kind of first-person view I want to have in a movie.
One of the things that makes this movie stand out in my mind as a great technical movie is the mirror effects, because there's so many mirrors in this movie. Did it make filming longer because you had to try and keep the lights and the crew and all the reflections out of the mirrors? How did you accomplish such technical mirror effects?
Yes, it did make it longer. When I said to the studio that I wanted to shoot the effects practical, they said, "Is this going to cost us a lot of money?" I said, "No, it'll cost the same. The shooting schedule will be longer, but post-production will be a snap, and we're going to be able to put the film together very quickly because I'm going to have the shots and nothing has to be composited or, go through all kinds of stuff." And I designed all the shots. The script that I walked down the floor with for that movie was almost 8 inches thick, because every shot was storyboarded and overheads and total layouts and where the camera was going to have to move. And, everything was planned. There was absolutely nothing in the way of changing stuff on the set, because you couldn't. Everything was totally planned out. So there was no ad-libbing on that movie. We went in knowing what we were going to shoot every day, where the camera was going to be, and how it was going to work. And there was stuff shot on, some mirror effects were done shooting through an optical flat, that was 45 degrees to the lens and using lighting from either side to create virtual images as you do on an optical printer, and are quite lost in today's world with digital.
Yeah.
Or a mirror set at 45 degrees to the camera, which we used for other reasons. And then double sets. A lot of the mirrors that you're seeing in the movie are not really mirrors; they're actually double sets, and the actors on the other side are either the real actors were on the far side of the mirror if they were facing the mirror, or when the actors are facing away from the mirror, the real actors are on the real side, and on the mirror side are doubles.
Wow!
And we worked with a choreographer who worked with the actors, and we had a metronome going on the set all the time. And you'll notice in most of the scenes where there's extremely complex mirror shots, there's no dialogue, because the metronome was going. So I couldn't really record dialogue. But we needed the metronome because,
yeah.
And everybody knew when to make their steps, because obviously the doubles and when most of the time the doubles couldn't see what the main character, what the actor was doing. And also the eye line would have been wrong had they been watching the other person.
Oh, yeah.
So it was all done we worked it all out with a choreographer, exactly how many steps, when you moved, when you put a prop down, and it was rehearsed and done with the metronome, and then we'd shoot. And you'd really have to watch because, you didn't have video assistant stuff back then.
Right.
So you couldn't rerun everything. I mean, it was expensive and complicated to have video assist back then. And in fact, if you recorded, you needed a recordist on set by union rules. It's so different than it is today. And so only on effects that we really needed to record the stuff did we record. It would have been just unmanageable to do it on every shot.
One that really stood out was when Donna came out of Tangina's body. How the heck did you guys pull that off?
Well, I mean, it was a series of shots that got Tangina's body from for Tangina to become mummified, Tom Skerritt to pull her off the mirror and throw her to the floor. As I said, it was all sets.
Mm-hmm.
We had a full floor underneath the floor that we were shooting on. Where we were shooting, that floor was already 12 feet off the ground. And we needed that for a lot of the effects that we were doing, like when Carol Ann is on the mirror and the mirror pulls her up to the ceiling.
Yeah.
Okay.
It actually was, we had 10-foot ceilings. I believe it was 10-foot ceilings in the apartment. And so the mirror had to be like 30 feet. It was like a 30-foot mirror, and it was operated hydraulically from below, so that when she got on, the mirror raised up.
Wow.
And was like a rod, and she was harnessed to the mirror, and but anyways, yeah. So when Tangina's thrown on the floor, she's thrown. There's a cut back to Tom Skerritt as he reacts, and then we cut back to Tangina. At that point, we had changed the Tangina dummy, and the Tangina dummy was Dick Smith built that. I mean, Dick Smith was the man who taught Stan Winston everything he knew. I mean, I wanted Stan on Poltergeist, but he wasn't available. And he said to me, "Why don't you hire my teacher?"
Oh.
And we ended up with Dick Smith, who was unbelievable. I mean, Dick Smith was a genius. Not that Stan Winston isn't a genius. I mean, Stan Winston, I did lots of stuff with Stan over the years, and I mean, this what Stan did for me in Dead and Buried was unbelievable. But anyway, so we had the great Dick Smith on Poltergeist, and he sculpted that face of Tangina, her mummified face. So anyhow, the dummy's hooked down to the floor, and there's a hole in the floor, and Donna actually comes up through the hole in the floor, puts her hand up through Tangina's face, and then Tom Skerritt pulls her up through the hole with the slime all over her, and Tangina's clothes were all treated so that they would just disintegrate as Donna came through Tangina's body.
Wow!
So it was kind of fun. I mean, it was, as I said, I drew out all these effects, and I had a ball. It spent 2 years putting that movie together.
Wow, I didn't know that.
Oh yeah, from the time that I started on the script, to designing all the effects, to getting everything ready, and boom, it was a good 2 years, and then, of course, we lost Heather before we finished shooting, which is a great sadness.
Yeah.
It was a great sadness to lose Heather.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to finish the film after she died, but I was not given a choice. So, but that's the part I don't like to talk about.
No, I get that. Well, I want to talk real quick about Scott. When he emerges from the pool, Trace and I both looked at each other last night and were like, "Oh, what is he covered with? What is that stuff on him?" It was like white goo, or he was supposed to be frozen in ice and stuff, but he looked like he was just plastered with this white pasty stuff.
Well, it was white pasty stuff. I mean, it was supposed to be like, like what you get covered with from the other side. And the other side is cold. That's why the pool's frozen. But what he was covered with was kind of some kind of protoplasm that just is white goo, because it gets all over the whole idea was that it was just this otherworldly goo that when everybody else shows up, it just disappears.
Well,
so, and then he's just wet.
Props to Kipley Wentz for letting you do that to him.
That wasn't, Scott was in it for a moment. I mean, it was a stunt guy that came up through the...
Oh, okay.
That was a pretty dangerous stunt. And, we had a stunt guy in Scott's clothing and, with all the goop all over him on a mortar at the bottom of the pool. And the ice on the top of the pool, which was actually styrofoam and fiberglass, was scored underneath. And he was actually shot up through that. He actually was propelled up through it.
Wow.
And there was actually he had a steel helmet, to protect the top of his head as he came through. But it was hidden under all the goop and stuff. So that's one of the reasons that Scott came up so goopy, was because we had to hide the steel helmet.
You've made mention before that, we did talk about the loss of Heather, and it really did change the film. You'd mentioned before that you'd had to stretch the film and maybe use some scenes that you normally wouldn't have. And having watched that film last night, I couldn't really pick out a scene that I would have left out. Do you remember a scene or a portion that had to be stretched out that you wished wouldn't have had to be?
Yeah, the main one was the party scene.
Okay.
Which didn't need to be nearly as long as it was, and it was only going to be like, we shot the whole scene because, a lot of times what I do when I'm writing is I will overwrite a scene and the end of a scene and overwrite the entrance into the scene so that when I move from scene to scene, I can make it pretty seamless by cutting off the overwritten ending and cutting off the overwritten beginning of the next scene, so that I can really find a point at which I can cut from scene to scene and make it flow. Gotcha. And also, it gives the actors a chance, by putting a quarter of a page, half a page of dialogue on that you're not going to use at the beginning of the scene. It gives the actor a chance to get into the scene. And also, I hate buttons on the end of the scene. So, and everybody loves to do a button at the end of the scene. They say a significant line and then they just stare.
Yeah. And
so what I do is you don't realize that I'm going to cut 4 lines before that. So, but anyway, so a lot of that kind of stuff that I do as extra stuff was on the beginnings and ends of a lot of scenes. And normally when I'm cutting a film, I'll do my cut, and then Ross Albert, who's been my editor on most of my feature films, Ross and I will go through and make a pass that he calls Shermanizing, where we just keep trimming and trimming and trimming. And I mean, I trim 3 frames here and 2 frames there, and just keep trimming and trimming and trimming until there's no fat.
Yeah, okay.
And I find that really makes a difference. If you pull a minute out of the film, it overall, which can take you a couple of days to do, but it's really worth it because it makes the flow of the film a lot better. But I couldn't do that with Poltergeist 3.
Right.
We barely made our delivery time because there had been an ending that we hadn't shot yet, and then Heather died, so we never got to shoot the ending. And I just wrote that stupid scene that's on the end of the film now, where they come out and you talk about Scott. The actor wasn't available the day that we were going to shoot that silly scene in Los Angeles. And it's the only scene that was shot in Los Angeles, was that ending scene where the family comes out through the mirror. And at that point, we were being forced to finish the film. None of us wanted to really do it. And he said, well, if Scott's not there, Scott's not there, so he stayed on the other side. Nobody missed him.
I don't think anybody thought of him except the actor himself.
Yeah, but he couldn't be there. He was in college and he was going through finals or midterms or something, and so we shot the scene without him. So it was bad enough I had to have a double for Carol Ann.
Yeah. Well, I do have a question about that double because it's a weird thing. Her name was Heather too. How weird was it for you guys to go back to set, crew and all, and have to say, all right, Heather, it's time to get on to set, and there's the same pajamas and a different little girl. That had to be very surreal.
I hardly had to deal with her. All she had to do was be on in Tom's arms.
Yeah.
With her hands around his him and her head laid over on his shoulders so that you couldn't see her face. And that was that was the only direction I had to give her.
Okay.
And I must admit, I was so torn. I just absolutely adored Heather O'Rourke. I mean, if I could have adopted her, I would have. I mean, my girlfriend at the time, my girlfriend during the time that I was doing Poltergeist, she and I just loved Heather. We used to take her places. We would borrow her from her parents on weekends and take her places. It was her birthday at one point, and we asked if we could take her out to dinner, and so the two of us just took Heather to dinner at some place that she said she wanted to go, and we just used to have the best time with her. And I'll tell you the best Heather story. We had an explosion on the set when, in the garage sequence.
Yeah.
When Tom lights the gasoline and it blows up the car. Well, anyhow, we had a big problem with that scene, and we were supposed to have the Chicago Fire Department there, but we were shooting the scene out in Oak Brook Terrace, and the mayor of Oak Brook Terrace said, "I don't want you to bring the Chicago Fire Department in. Our fire department can handle this." And we said, "We don't think so." And he says, yeah, we can do this. So we had brought one person out to train them, and it seemed like it was going to be okay. Well, when the explosion actually happened, these guys got so scared they dropped their hoses and ran. And when I gave the cue for them to put the fire out,
they weren't there.
And I'm watching over a television camera. There's no firemen, and suddenly they come running out of all the entrances to the garage. We're all outside. It was too dangerous to have anybody inside other than the firemen and a couple of special effects guys. Anyhow, suddenly there's black smoke pouring out from everything. We can't see anything on the video cameras. And the whole place is burning. There's flames and black smoke pouring out of the garage. So our special effects guys grabbed the hoses and ran in there and grabbed breathing apparatus, and they put out the fire. But the fire had just gone. I mean, they put out the fire enough so they could get the cameras out. We got all the cameras out.
Thank goodness.
I mean, we had 3 Panavision cameras down there. So there's, $1.5 million worth of cameras.
Wow.
And lenses down there sitting in their fireproof plastic boxes. But who knows how long those boxes would have stayed fireproof.
Right.
Exactly.
So they went down and got the cameras, and our Ben Scott, our stunt coordinator, and Cal Acord, our special effects guy, and their guys, they were just total heroes. They went down, they made sure that there was no one left down there, that no one had been left behind, which the firemen, when they ran, left people behind. And we got everybody out of there. And anyway, the news was there because the fire burned and did a couple of $1 million worth of damage to the building.
Oh, my gosh.
To do. And so anyways, it was all over the news that night. And so the next morning, I'm sitting in my office, and Heather comes running into my office and says, Gary, I saw it in the news last night about the fire and the explosion. I said, yeah, it was really horrible. She said, did anyone get hurt? And I said, no one got hurt. She said, oh, that's good. Then she looks at me and says, did you get the shot?
That's a professional, a very young professional.
I mean, that was Heather, man. She was the best. She wanted to be a director. Her real career choice was going to be to become a director. She didn't want to stay an actor. She was going to act as long as she needed to make money, and then go off to school and study and become a director. And I think she would have been a great director. She was incredibly smart. She was, for 11 years old, she was just so sophisticated and so thoughtful. And she was great. I mean, she used to sit on the set with me all the time and watch me set up these shots. And she would ask me really intelligent questions about what I was doing. And she kept saying to me, you don't mind me being here, do you? I said, no, you just go, because I never sit in my chair. I said, just go sit in my chair. And she was just great. I actually have some pictures of her. She'd come down and watch dailies with me. And she was incredible. She was just the best.
Well, we were lucky enough last night to be able to see some behind-the-scenes footage that her mom, Kathleen, had shot of that scene where she's dragging her, getting drug up the mirror and all of that. And, just watching you work was quite amazing as well, directing those scenes. Really? I don't think I've ever seen that. I can definitely provide you a copy of that. That's not a problem. Oh, that would be great. Is there something special that you can tell me, maybe an unheard story, or just something that we don't know about your time working with Heather? Just working with Heather every day was just a joy.
She was just so smart. I mean, from day one, when we sat down to do a table read, and her relationship with Zelda off screen was as endearing as their relationship was on screen. They just absolutely adored each other. And I think, the things that I remember most about Heather is from day one, she said, I want to spend a lot of time on the set with you because I like the way you direct. And I mean, this coming out of an 11-year-old was just mind-boggling. But, she was a 45-year-old back then in an 11-year-old body. She was so smart. She was so aware. She was so caring. She was so loving. She was just this wonderful human being, wrapped up in this adorable 11-year-old body. And she was very special. And I miss her. We all miss her.
Absolutely.
Because I think she would have gone on to become something very, very, very special.
No doubt. Thank you for that. And I know it's hard to talk and it's not your favorite topic because it's hard. So I appreciate it.
Yeah, I was a pallbearer at her funeral, and it was probably the worst day of my life.
I cannot imagine. Not at all.
Yeah, me neither.
One thing I did want to ask you about the ending, and I'm not going to ask you the question you think I'm going to ask you because you've been asked it enough, and I won't go there. But all I know is that a lot of films are shot out of order, and this particular you didn't get to film your ending. Did you intentionally decide to shoot the end of the movie at the end? Because sometimes even movies start with the end.
No. The original ending that I wrote for the film, the studio had determined before we started shooting the film that it was too expensive. And they asked me to do an alternate ending when we originally shot the film. And we came up with an idea for an alternate ending that none of us were very happy with. And Jay and Laddie just said to me, shoot the alternate ending. If we don't like it, we'll come back and shoot your ending. And we'll put the money into it and shoot the full ending. So we shot the film, and I mean, I don't remember when the ending was shot. It was not shot last. It was shot sometime in the schedule.
Okay.
And we put the film together with this ersatz ending that was done, which I think, you've got people saying original endings. Somebody put out a thing with, most of that is test footage that somebody put together and claimed it was the ending of the film. But anyways, we did put together an ending and we previewed it, and the audiences hated it as much as I did. and we previewed it in Las Vegas, I believe it was, at the University of Las Vegas. And the audience reaction was as bad as my reaction. I hated the ending. So anyways, we went back and we talked about it, and the boys said, yeah, okay, get it done. So it was going to take a while to get everything ready to do that ending. And we decided that we were going to shoot that ending in Los Angeles, not in Chicago. So everything was struck in Chicago. And all the sets and everything were shipped to Los Angeles because we were going to need so many special effects guys to actually do the original ending, or what I had written as the original ending. It was going to be pretty complicated to do. So we were going to do it in LA. In the meantime, I had a pilot to shoot, and something that I had sold to ABC, and they had put on hold. And they wanted me to direct the pilot, which was Sable, which was something that I put together with Gene, actually, with Gene Simmons. And so anyways, I shot the pilot and did the pilot, delivered the pilot, and then went back and then we were just getting ready. Barry Bernardi, producer, was in Chicago with me, and I had a bunch of other people in Chicago because I had a lot of the people from Poltergeist working on the pilot, and we had a production meeting in Chicago, and on the phones with everybody in LA, and then we got a telephone call from David Wardlow, who said he was setting up a conference call with us and with the studio. And that was the call to tell us that Heather had passed away that morning.
Oh, man.
And Laddie just said, get on a plane. So I just dropped everything I was doing in Chicago, and Barry Bernardi and I jumped on a plane and flew to Los Angeles and met in Laddie's office, and at that meeting we decided we were not going to finish the film. The next day was Heather's funeral. As I said, I was a pallbearer, and obviously all the executives from MGM were at the funeral. And Bahoop and I flew back to Chicago to work on my pilot. And they called and said they want us to shoot an ending, and they want us to finish the film, because none of us were going to put out the film with the ending that we had that we had previewed that we hated. So I sat down and wrote that stupid ending that's on there now, which was less stupid than the ending that we had shot originally.
All right. At least it's an improvement.
And, as a film, as a script, as a film, Poltergeist is the least favorite of my films, but as a production, I'm really proud of it. I'm proud of the images. I'm proud of what we did. I'm proud of the effects. I'm proud of a lot of the performances in the film. I think Heather was amazing in the film, and so was Zelda.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom and Nancy were just a joy to work with. On those levels as a production, it's not the film I wanted to make as a film.
Yeah. But we're still talking about it 32 years later. So
yeah.
You've made a mark on so many people with this film.
Before COVID, in the 2 years, I keep getting asked so much about, I think it was like 3 years ago, Rue Morgue magazine asked me to come up and do a lecture for the Black Museum series. And I said, you know what, let me do a lecture on the special effects, on the practical effects of Poltergeist. And Andrea, Sabasetti said, oh, that'd be great. So I did it, and it was unbelievable. The response was unbelievable. And I expanded on it and computerized it, and I started doing it, and I've done that lecture literally all over the world. I did it in Aberystwyth, Wales, in last November, and they had to keep moving theater to theater because how many people showed up to see the lecture. I mean, there were thousands of people out there. I was standing on the stage and looking up at this lecture hall that just goes on forever. And then it got reviewed at that point, and then I started getting all kinds of bookings for this year, for 2020, to go do these lectures, which I really enjoy doing. It's just fun. I just love talking to young filmmakers. But anyways, obviously none of them this year happened.
Right. Well, I was going to say, if you're doing them in 2021, I'm in Milwaukee, so if you're anywhere in the area, I would love to come and be a guest there to see this lecture.
Well, I think one of the places we were going to do it, everybody said to me, why don't I do it in Chicago? And the Music Box in Chicago wanted to do it, and they were going to do it as a big event. And so once COVID had gone away, maybe next fall or something. A year from now, we'll do it at the Music Box, so you can come down from Milwaukee.
I would love that.
That'd be cool.
That would be great. Gary, I've taken a lot of your time, and I really, really thank you for all the insight and the stories and the memories of this movie that is beloved to me. And just thanks so much.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you. I appreciate it. It was fun.
Our thanks to Gary Sherman for joining us on the show this week.
That was pretty cool, man.
I'm sure you learned a little bit about your favorite movie. Well, one of your movies you enjoyed.
I did, yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I was texting back and forth. I got an insider in California, a friend, and I said, hey, I'm on the phone with Gary Sherman. Is there anything I should ask him? And it's no secret by Brian Procrast. He says, ask about the fire on the set, because there's a big fire on the set. And then Heather walks in and goes, well, did you get the shot?
That's very important.
It was. It's very important. Very cute story, though. And, I love reminiscing about that movie and about Heather, and he did not disappoint. So it was funny. He goes, how long is this going to last, when we were communicating back and forth? And I'm like, 45 minutes. And here it was almost an hour and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Oops, sorry.
That was very cool, though. The stuff he was telling was just intriguing.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
He's a very technical guy, as far as all the specs he was giving with camera lenses and stuff. And as a filmmaker, I ate it up. But hopefully you all found your own piece of information that you never knew before.
Well, and the special effects that he was talking about just amazed me on how he had to go through it and design it and come up with all the ideas to do what he was doing. Just on some of the stuff we talked about was amazing.
It was. Anyway, follow us on YouTube, please. Subscribe to our channel. We're at Fancounters Podcast. And then also send us an email. If you have any comments or questions about this episode or any others, or if you have a guest that you want to hear on the show, and if we get them on the show, we'll put you on the show. Send those inquiries to hello@fancounters.com. Now, next week, we have another celebrity guest coming up. We release episodes every Friday, and that is going to do it for us this week.
You bet. We're ready, man.
All right. We'll talk to you guys next Friday. This is when you say bye-bye.
Oh, bye-bye.
He'll figure it out someday.
One of these days I'll get it.